Okay, well, good evening all. Welcome to the GPC meeting for December 16th, 2025. Closing in on 2026, which is amazing. Thought we just hit 2025. We'll start off as normal with our introduction of our members, and we do have a couple of guests, and we'll ask you to come up and introduce yourselves. Thank you.
Tom Smith.
Jane Evelyn.
Anne Marie Martin.
Paul Hogan.
Dan Saunders.
Mary Beth Gilbert, Select Board Rep.
Galen Webley, Support Staff.
Eric LaBelle, Public Works Director.
Peter Conroy, Operations Manager, Wastewater.
Excellent. Thank you, Eric. Peter.
Thanks for coming.
Appreciate you guys coming down. We'll try not to keep you too long after a long day at work. So we really can, I guess, jump right into it. We had a review of the capital plan a couple of meetings ago, and there's a laundry list of items on the wastewater treatment plant. And the real kind of question we had associated with that was how, when you guys are planning your repair of a pump station or the sewer plant, which is like an $8 million project way off in the future, how do we take into account climate change and the potential impacts that's going to be? Because that's a long-term capital investment that the town's making. And I was curious how that works.
As you can imagine, a lot of our pump stations are in low areas. That's kind of the nature of the design. We tend to gather the wastewater at the bottom of the watersheds and then pump it to higher location. And then when we want to go gravity, it saves energy that way. It's the most efficient way to move sewage from one location to another. So being in those low areas, some of those areas are susceptible to flooding. Okay. So the new standards that we have now place us, and the best example I could provide you is Paddy Creek. If you look at that pump station there, all electronics have to be above a certain elevation, and that's approximately 3 feet above base flood elevation at this time.
Okay.
So there's an expectation that these pump stations will last approximately 30 years. That's their approximate life. So those projections should protect all those areas. So as you'll find at Paddy Creek, the generator, all control panels are all well above the wet well right now.
Okay. So that's 2 to 3 feet above the current.
Yeah, you'll see there's a retaining wall that's probably 3 or 4 feet tall next to the Paddy Creek Road now. And all the equipment is up above that. We've fenced that in, so it's not so much of an eyesore. Not that generators are eyesores, but people just barely don't want to see them.
And how do you, is there a process that, I mean, I'm coming out of the industry, right? So if we were doing that to ensure we did it every time, we would have a procedure in place that this is what we're due for critical equipment. Is there something like that, the town, that you go off and retire, you guys both hit the Powerball and you leave, how that information gets transferred to the next folks to make sure when they're addressing?
Well, they've come through, these are design standards. As we go through these, we'll do the next 3 years. But right now, there's an elevation set that's, it's an industry standard, if you will, for us. And right now, I would tell you that, the wet well probably was close to seeing water a few years back when we had some of the flooding the last couple of years. But the electronics were well above those locations. So we're not anticipating anytime soon seeing any issues at that location. Like I said, the projection is for the additional 30 years from now, that they'd still be protected during that time period.
Right. All right. So 30 years from now, we'll take a look at it again and may have to raise it again.
Sure.
Hopefully not.
That's right.
So that was one question on, does anyone else have a question associated with the flooding and the construction?
Yeah, I do. Is there any time when there's raw sewage that leaves this and heads out into the water?
No. No. If there was, we'd have to report any kind of an issue like that. And that would probably be as a result of some kind of mechanical failure. We've not had that issue. All of our equipment typically has redundancy built into them. So there's one pump that can actually handle all the flow, but we have actually 2 pumps in place. So should something happen with one pump, the other one will take over. We also have backup generation should we lose power, which happened actually since in the last 4 years. We did lose power everywhere in town. No issues. We were able to, we had to take some portable generators to move around. Some of the smaller pump stations that we could afford to actually just build up the waste in the wet well, and then we'll come around, pump it down, go to the next one.
So there's no instance where there could be an overflow or anything that perhaps needs to be siphoned off out into the ocean or along those lines?
It'd have to be catastrophic. We are not, some communities are combined sewer, if you've heard of that term, where their stormwater is combined with their wastewater. We are not. We're a separated system. We're entirely, our system only handles wastewater.
Okay, thank you.
But we had a big problem last summer, not this most recent summer, when we had,
The summer before.
yeah,
So-
Yeah, 2024?
yeah.
Yeah.
24, yes, yeah.
Yep.
Which was an isolated event when the,
Yeah, it was,
System.
everything was going through the treatment plant. It wasn't an issue where something was escaping from our system. And we had a treatment issue because we had some kind of contamination within the treatment plant, which actually killed off all our microorganisms inside the treatment plant.
right,
It's a
but
very
we had
different
to
issue.
then dump.
No,
without it being
we were not
treated.
dumping, we're still passing everything through the treatment plant, but we're reseeding the plant to rebuild our microorganisms.
Okay,
So
I mean, our-
chlorination was going on, dechlorination was going on.
yeah, I mean, the beach water levels went wild at the same time as that happened. You know, the weekly testing, the numbers were, you know,
Yeah,
abnormally high.
Yeah.
Was it cause and effect? Did the water come from there? But, I mean, my understanding at the time was we had to push out untreated,
we weren't treated to the level that we wanted to, but we were taking bacterial counts, and we've been through this quite a bit. It was happily would share all our information with you in the what we call the 49 forms. That's what bacterial counts were any
Yeah.
given day during that time.
Yeah, so I think it's a nomenclature thing, right? So it wasn't raw sewage, it was treated, it's just that per EPA guidelines, we have a latitude window, and we hit our latitude window, and we had to notify the
right.
EPA. So, but to go to Anne Marie's point, I think Eric was talking, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Eric was responding to raw sewage. We didn't dump raw sewage in.
That's right. Yeah, what we had to do is rebuild our colonies
Right.
within the
Yeah.
treatment plant, and so our treatment levels were not ideal for us, were not optimal. It took us about 21 days to get us back to optimal, and we're 100%. Well, I say 100%, 98 to 99% is the amount of organics we remove out of the water.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I don't have any more questions on the capital piece, because he answered those for me. But maybe on an important piece that we also have to look at is the loading and what the, you know, kind of the, go ahead.
Can I do one more on the capital piece? I looked at the, you know, the capital plan, and it showed potential costs out, you know, going out undetermined period of time. So I was, like, the sewer lines themselves were one of the items that we need to replace at some point.
Yes.
How far out is that, and is that like $20 million?
It's an interesting question, because PVC, for example, which we have a lot of our system, is a polyvinyl chloride, which is a plastic
Yeah.
product. You know, they've anticipated the life of that would have been 30, maybe 50 years. The reality is, you know, I've worked in systems where vitrified clay pipes could be 175, 200 years old. So asking when it should be replaced is really, we're gonna get cameras in the sewers and see if there's any issues, any defects in our sewers. The other type of material that we have is asbestos cement pipe, which is a little bit older, era 1950s, 1960s era pipe. During the 1970s, we all went over to polyvinyl chloride, so PVC pipe. And once that happened, everybody's been in that mode since then. It's really a function of monitoring how the pipe is doing. Has it moved? Have we had settlement in the ground? Has something else happened? But for the most part, I mean, I've seen, like I said, I could look at a vitrified clay pipe and say it's equally as good as a piece of a PVC pipe, even though it's 175 years old. So, you know, and in that particular circumstance, I'm not necessarily replacing it. Sometimes I can go in and put in a plastic liner inside those pipes. That might be the best solution. So we're going to go through, and we're going to do some videotaping with approximately a mile of sewer pipe each year. And we're gonna be evaluating that and just kind of saying, we're gonna take a sample throughout our town and our collection
Sure.
system. And we're just gonna kind of say, all right, maybe we ought to focus in this area. Do we need to replace it? Do we need to line it? Do we need to do some kind of treatment to it?
And what's the time frame? When does that happen? When's it going to happen?
We're gonna be doing that next year.
It's gonna start
We're gonna-
then?
Yeah, so, we have a pretty new system. I've worked for cities like Portland and such where
Oh, right,
the systems are,
yeah,
uh,
120 years old.
yeah, more than that. I mean, the east end used to go straight off into the Fall River, the west end, I should say, and that's, used to be the way it was. But our particular system is relatively young. A lot of our infrastructure was built in the late 70s and early 80s. It's pretty young for a sewer
Yeah,
system.
sure. Are you seeing any impact from any potential groundwater rise? 'Cause that's another one of the aspects of sea level rise is the pressure.
You know, we're always concerned about that. We're not, I&I does not seem to be a huge issue for us, but that's not to say that we don't want to go looking for it. If we have weaknesses, if we have maybe some manhole structures that might have weakened, we're sometimes concerned about sump pumps, that people might be connecting their sump pumps, which is illegal for them to be doing on our system. We're not designed to be treating clean water or groundwater, and quite frankly, our plant's not that large to be able to handle that much flow.
Sure.
A sump pump could provide upwards of 500 gallons per day, and if everybody was doing that, it'd be overwhelming for our treatment plant. When we saw a lot of the flooding in 2023, we saw our flows come up, and we're kind of wondering where we were, because typically, even we get a rainstorm today, we don't really see much of a blip on for us, which is a good indication that we're not getting a lot of I&I inflow and infiltration. I'm sorry about the alphabet soup, but we use a lot of acronyms in our business. But we're not seeing a great indication of that. But, you know, we still want to get out to Goose Rock's Beach and take a look at some of those structures that are out that way and see if we do have a little bit of leakage or if anything's going on.
Just one crazy, where I used to live, they didn't allow garbage disposals because of, just adding extra nutrients and
Yep.
mess
Yep.
to your system. We have no rules,
Yeah.
or do we
I would
care?
tell you, if you're on a septic system, you probably don't want to be using a garbage
that would-
disposal, but it's not really a problem for us.
Uh-huh.
We don't have a rule restricting that here.
That's good, because we got one in there. I used it this weekend. Fed them a little chili.
Oh, yeah, that-
Okay. Any other questions on the capital piece from the board? Okay. How about on the flow?
And you're gonna,
It's a kind of a critical aspect, especially with some of the changes in the regulations we were talking about last week. I'm sure both of you stayed up late to watch it.
sorry.
But we were talking about changes in the state of Maine laws that could trigger some additional development in our town, right? And then what would the impact be to our sewer plant?
Well, sewer plant right now, what we do is we monitor. Our measures for the treatment plant's capacity is really around organic loading for us. And I think we shared with you that our 2019 study from Wright Pierce. And they evaluated that, there was a variation. In our peak flow, it's not a big surprise. The month of July is usually probably about our peak organic loading time. And it's a very busy time during that time. So we measure our organic loadings once a week. We measure it. So we have a continuous 52 weeks a year. We have measurements of our organic loadings. And the capacity was established, or at least was modeled and determined, that we could handle approximately 2,400 pounds of organic matter per day, was about the optimal peak for the treatment plant. So, and they had evaluated that, and so based on what they measured at the time, they felt that we probably had capacity for approximately 600 more homes at that time. And we continue to monitor that, and ironically, so our average now is actually somewhat lower than that now, and I don't know, I can't tell you why, or whether there's variables as to when we get organics, how many people are in town at any given time. Is there industry that might have come or left that would provide us organic? For example, a brewery, not that we've had a brewery here, would provide you a lot of organic loading.
Sure.
A lot of, we call it BOD, biological oxygen demand. It's, you know, often people relate organic loading to people being here, but industry can provide you a lot of organic loading. If I was a manufacturer, some kind of renderings or things like that, and I was flushing that down into the sewers as a waste product, we would see a big loading with that. So breweries, like as I mentioned earlier, the hops have a lot of organic loading to them, and they have to usually have a pre-treatment system to remove it before they send it to us. So larger cities that have those types of industries have what's called a pre-treatment program, where industries must pre-treat their waste before they discharge it to us. So often they get really kind of creative about it, and they'll reuse those byproducts.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were making chicken sandwiches or something like that, and then they will actually use those and ultimately use it in animal feed or something like that. So they'll recapture all those organics that might be in that flow and recapture and resell it as a byproduct. So we don't have a lot of that here. We're probably a pretty mellow community. We're not a very exciting community when it comes to organic waste and those types of things. So we're pretty steady, and so we're not really seeing any spikes. Where frankly, we're seeing, you know, what we've been reading for the last 5 years is actually lower than what Wright Pierce was gathering back then.
Okay,
So-
so that's 600 number, still a pretty good,
Yeah,
Number.
I mean, we will continue to monitor as we go.
Yeah.
We're required to by law, so.
And if you have 600 new homes, say, do you make your estimates based upon a certain number of people per home, or how does that play into it?
We don't, as we know, being such a vacation destination, I think we see certainly more people being here, but we measure at the treatment plant. We know how much organics are being, and how much we can treat. And we're really not exceeding our capacity. We have not been exceeding our capacity for the last 5 years as it relates to our typical organic loadings.
If there should be, say, 1,000 more homes, would that be a problem?
We would be, as I said, we'll measure every week, and so we'll know if we're seeing our organics starting to steadily rise. We would see that, and then we would start to raise our hand. You know, for two reasons. The Department of Environmental Protection, then we would have to notify them. If we're approaching our 85th percentile or so of our capacity, then we need to tell them. And at that point, they would likely place us into the motion to basically start a design for either expansion of a train, or, you know, some more expansion of the treatment plant to be able to handle the additional organics. And that's likely the direction that we would be told to go in. So, but we measure, as I mentioned, it's not like we would see all of a sudden, boom. You know, we measure it on a weekly basis. We'll see that rise coming in, and we're not seeing that just yet.
So Eric, the good news from what you said from the 2019 Wright Pierce report is that they said that during the summer high day, they could see up to 3,400 BODs per day, but you're saying that over the past 5 years, we haven't seen that rise.
Over the past 5 years, we have seen our max has been 2260.
And then don't we have, from when you guys did the tour of the plant for us, do we have some built-in capacity still within the plant? Or is it once we get to that 600 units, we are building a bigger structure, or is there a latitude there's just certain systems within the plant that have to be enlarged for capacity, or is it an expansion of the whole system?
I guess I'm not quite clear as to where our weakness points would be. Is it our, you know, it could be contact time for disinfection. It could be how much aeration tanks that we have. So the process is quite straightforward. We screen any kind of inorganics that we don't want in there. So any plastics or anything that just make it to us, we want to screen those out ahead of time. And then we go into an aeration tank, and that's where our microorganisms are. And those tanks is really what breaks down those organics and breaks them. So basically small bugs get eaten by the bigger and bigger bugs, and those bigger bugs fall to the bottom of a clarifier. We capture those bugs, we remove them. We dewater those, and then we disinfect what's left, the water where the organics have been removed from. We just disinfect that. So the locations that we would have limitations typically would be the aeration tanks. So do we have enough aeration and enough to grow the microorganisms that we want to grow? The other, so that is probably, and disinfection time is the other one. So, but that's usually driven by hydraulics, right? How much flow, we're getting a lot of flow. We are designed to be at 700,000 gallons per day on average is our plant capacity. We run between 300,000 and 400,000 gallons on our peak summertime. That's typically where our averages are running. So if we're seeing increase in hydraulics, then yeah, we have reason to go looking for removing the hydraulic flow in, because we know it's not your standard household stuff. It's coming in somewhere else. Is it coming in because we have a leaky pipe, or do we have a broken pipe that's on the ocean? Things like that.
So Eric, if, I know we only have a limited time tonight, but if folks are interested on the growth planning committee, would you be open to giving them a tour of the plant and go into greater detail of the operations?
Peter and I are pretty excited about wastewater treatment, so we welcome anybody that wants to have a tour.
I've been on a tour. I highly recommend it. Maybe not on a cold, windy day, though, or a hot, steamy one.
It's an interesting process. We can take you through the plant within a half hour's time. It doesn't have to be a lengthy visit. But it's interesting to see the process. We hear from a lot of the parents. We were behind the elementary school that saying, "Geez, we never knew you were back here." And most people have associated wastewater treatment plant as being this yucky kind of process and all that. It's actually an interesting, very compact, interesting process that is really impressive if you think we're removing 99% of the organics out of the water any given day. It's pretty impressive, and it's a kind of a neat process to watch. Very biological and chemical. But it's neat. I like it. I mean, of course, I'm a little bit of a nerd about it, so.
So Eric, just to go back to some of the numbers for the committee. So, Wright Pierce had said, you got like 600 latitude window
Yeah.
before you trip the window, and we have issued, permits since 2019. So is it just as simple math as you take those numbers out, or, so it's 600 minus whatever we've built to date? Or is there something else going on here where you sort of step back and say, okay, no, it's actually roughly right, you've got 600 to 1,000 more that you can still build? Because I was listening to what you said, and I didn't quite get that we've gone down. I don't know how to interpret that.
It's hard to draw a direct correlation between the two. There's variables involved, who's here at any given time and the rate at which flows come in, because it's an average that we're running. So as I mentioned, and I wasn't here in 19 when they did the report, but they went back 4 years prior to that. Right. I believe they started 15, 16, 17, 18. So we've not seen the levels that they had seen prior to that. So, and I'm not sure what the reasoning. Sometimes we get a sudden flush of rain. Sometimes that will kick up some organics out of the system, because organics do settle out in the system at times. And all of a sudden they get pushed up, and all of a sudden they'll show up at the plant. So the rationale and the reasoning for why all of a sudden you would have one, as I mentioned, in 2021 was our highest in the last 5 years, and that was at 2260. So we're quite a bit lower than what Wright Pierce saw. And so our job is to monitor and continue to just monitor what's going on and make sure, and if we're approaching or creeping up into this number, our job is to raise our hand and let people know what's going on.
So can you also give us, the committee, just some insight into what does that look like? Because I know you said that you would have to contact some agency if you were in the 85 percentile of the load, and then the planning would start. So could you help the committee understand, because I think that's where some of these questions are coming from is, where's the guardrails for future growth, and are we making sure that we have everything in line and we don't jump over something like as important as a wastewater plant? So what exactly, are we looking at a new plant build, and that once we get to that 85% level, it takes 2 years to build out? Or can you just help us get a little bit of understanding of what contents?
It's likely an additional train, so unless they require us to do a different type of treatment, most treatment plants are basically, we grow our microorganisms, we settle them in clarifiers, and we remove the organics out of those clarifiers and treat the water that is left over. And so, and that's just simply put, so usually if we don't have the capacity, sometimes we need to increase capacity, which means another train. Maybe I need another aeration tank, maybe I need another clarifier. That would buy me 50% in theory of, beyond my capacity. It's probably not even theory, it probably is actual.
So
That's
it's not like our plant would have to be completely scrapped,
No,
and we
no.
would look at building a whole new plant. We are just looking to take whatever the weakest link is in the system and then build that out to the capacity
just
that's
expand.
needed. And so our plant would basically sort of just keep morphing
Yep.
into whatever. It's not a complete tear down, rebuild a new wastewater
Right.
treatment plant.
I don't see a scenario where that would happen. Of course, because we're also an existing treatment plant, we have to continue to operate.
Right.
So we would literally build while the plant is ongoing.
And the process that we use isn't, there's no like, our wastewater treatment process with our biodegradables, with our bacteria and stuff, there's no, that's an industry robust design that can handle, keep growing with loads, just, we can keep building it out. It's not like we're gonna reach a point where
Yeah.
that type of process doesn't work anymore.
No, I
So
mean,
we're
as I said,
good.
I mean, the goal one is to remove organics. So
Right.
typically, they want us to remove 85%. We're removing 98 to 99%. So but our current plant's working well. If its capacity is just usually comes down to aeration, possibly more settlement and clarifiers. So those two, so as I mentioned, it's probably, we already have 3 trains of aeration tanks. We use 2 of them, and one in the wintertime. And so, we could use that 3rd tank, and maybe it's just an additional clarifier. But usually that additional tank that we have, usually we use it, if we're cleaning out one tank, we might switch over to another tank, those types of things. A little bit of redundancy within the plant. So, it's just, I'm not seeing, yes, there's no, there's nothing there's no big restriction. The only thing that might change is our licenses might change, and then that may require us to, so every 5 years, we get a new license, so they might require us, let's say, we want you to remove PFAS, for example, or something like that, right? So then, what does that look like? Well, now I'm looking at carbon filters and things like that. So,
But those would be state mandates that then, obviously, every time a state gives a mandate, there's some time for us to react to it, right?
yes, you
Yeah.
have 5 years, so they give you your license, and they give you 5 years to
Yeah.
fix it.
Oh,
So
okay.
you're out of compliance when they give you your license.
Oh, I see.
And they say, basically, you got a 5-year permit, you have 5 years to get to this point. Typically, that's how it works.
Okay.
So I was looking at this 30-day moving average chart to try to infer like where the crux is, where the decision point has to be made to expand the system. And I didn't see a whole lot of, because it's a 30-day moving average, I didn't see a whole lot of surprises in this chart. I mean, the peak periods are right around, let's say, Christmas and summertime, when tourists come in and so forth. So we're talking really only sewage systems rather than, of course, all the septic fields that don't get counted in here. So the real demand right now for this service seems to be maybe around the Christmas time period and, of course, the peak summer. There's not a whole lot of growth over this literally 4-year period of time. So what's your best guess? If this kind of stays the same, it's not really growing that fast, if at all, what's the crunch point we have to expand the system?
So
Is
the
it 2
85%
years, 10 years down the road?
With the 85 percentile is usually our trigger for us. So that our DEP, which is our regulator, Department of Environmental Protection, is our regulator. And they assign us our permit, our discharge permit, and our treatment permit. So, so when we start to approach that 85 percentile over, I believe it's 3 or 4 months period of time on average, then they're saying, okay, you're getting a little too close. Okay, so now start planning as to what is it going to look like. So speaking to Mary Beth's point is that at some point we start to need to plan for that new train or the additional tankage that we might need to treat the additional flow.
We aren't there yet.
Sir?
We're not there yet.
No.
Okay, what's your best guess based on what you see? in
Before you
this-
retire or
this
after you retire?
No, I mean, we're looking, we haven't seen any increase right now in our biological loading since 19, so we're not alarmed at these numbers at all at this point, so, you know, we might be at 40% or so, and I'm kind of spitballing, Peter, is that about right?
64 peak.
Yeah. So it might be at 40% of capacity right now, so we're not, you know, it has to be for a period of time, it can't be just an instantaneous, which is, we had a really high BOD today.
Sure.
So it's, yeah, I don't wanna get too much into the
Yeah.
details of how we treat things and things, but, yeah, we hold on our organic step waste for 10 days, 12 days, those types of things, so it's a little bit of a,
But tying this discussion in with the things we've been talking before, about all the planning for affordable housing, expanding the number of people living in the business area and so forth, the demand's gonna come from there for septic.
Yeah.
So if we do go ahead with all these affordable housing type programs and so forth, and have people come in, put them into these smaller lots we're talking about, the demand for, I guess, septic, the services gonna go way up. It's not gonna happen in the rural areas and the farming areas and so forth. It's gonna happen from downtown, which could be a very big increase. It's not gonna happen overnight.
no.
But what's your reaction time? All of a sudden you see a 10% growth, you're not worried. If you see a 30% growth, you're probably worried in
Yeah.
what's gonna happen. How much time do we have to make a decision, do you think? What's the planning horizon?
It's hard for me to say. I mean, we've not seen, I mean, since 2019, there's been 61 home starts here, so it's not something we've, you know,
Home start in this system?
yeah,
Not in the
I'm
town.
not speaking out of school here, Galen, that's correct, right? We had 61 or so.
61 growth permits were issued since the 2019 study.
But where, Galen? Here in the sewage
growth.
system?
The growth area, yes.
Growth area,
In the
okay.
growth area.
So,
But the transition area could add two.
Transition can be on sewer, but again, they're also on septic too.
Yeah. We
There's
don't,
no guarantee
it's
unless
not
it's
something
goose
we track.
rocks.
Is that something we track?
We do track that.
Okay.
But the guardrails, so what you're telling us is that we actually have some guardrails here, right? So we have 85%, we have agencies looking over our shoulder, so when we tip to that 85%, they're gonna knock on our, or they're gonna tap our shoulder and say, hey, what's your build-out plan?
Yep.
And then that also 85% could be a flag back to the planning board to say, or when we start to say, you know, to the growth planning board and to the planning board to say, hey, we gotta slow down because we're coming close. So we can provide our own, we have guardrails, but we can provide our own speed bumps,
yes,
even though we're taking them away in town.
we have communities near here that have had to slow their building permits because of the treatment plant capacity.
Sure.
And they had enough, it was like there was enough stuff put in place that they didn't get to a place where they were in trouble.
I mean, I assume at some point, Galen, someone comes in for a permit, and you've been advised that we have no more capacity, and it's gonna be 4 years away until we have capacity, and so you can't issue a building permit. They have to show that they have sewer,
Yep.
sewer
And
septic.
there are property files back from the 90s in Kennebunkport where that happened.
Sure.
Where our plant wasn't up to standard and we couldn't issue building permits. So anytime there's a proposed subdivision or someone buys a piece of land they want to build and they have to connect to sewer, they have to provide documentation from the wastewater department in order for us to issue those growth permits. So they can't do that until then.
I think an interesting piece, and you don't necessarily have to maybe answer it tonight, but to think about would be if we hit that 85%, you know, how much time would we need to, and it was a real number, and we knew things were growing and all the rest, and it wasn't just a couple of months. How much time do we have the location? Can we get the equipment and so forth in order to expand the capacity? Is it a 3-year project, 4-year project?
No, I'd say it's a 1 to 2 year project.
1 to 2 year project? And we have I'm assuming you'd have to add another train or something to the plant, so the footprint gets a little bit bigger. Do we have the acreage around the plant to support
Yeah.
that?
We do.
We do.
We have 4 acres, I think we have
Yeah.
4
But
acres
we know-
bounded
we're
that
lucky
are,
Yeah, we are fortunate because, yes,
Yeah.
the aggregate of like Parks and Rec area, but the reality is we're no longer composting because of the PFAS, the regulation that's been passed through, so
Yeah,
that whole back parking lot is now cold storage, if you will. Yeah.
that's not gonna change, right? Unless we have to put a treatment system in, which,
Right, but
Who knows
it's
how to
space
handle
that
that
is right
correctly.
there next to our footprint that could
but,
be
yeah,
utilized.
and we also have the corresponding area next to it that's like a no-touch zone that's guarded
Rural.
off.
It's
Yeah,
still
it's guarded
wooded.
off for future wastewater expansion.
okay. Just one last, maybe kind of ties back to the capital plan. I think there was like an $8 million holding place
8 point,
5 to 6 years out for the plant itself. Was that all associated with the current infrastructure and just projects to maintain it, replace a clarifier, whatever it might be? or
Yeah,
is it more-
we've rebuilt our clarifiers just, you know, we finished up this last $6 million bond that we just, in 2023.
Okay.
We rebuilt 2 clarifiers. We rebuilt 3 pump stations. And because we have to shift away from composting, we had to put in centrifuges for dewatering our biosolids, because we now have to dewater them and landfill them. So which just kind of makes me sad every time I say that, but we tripped, I think, 1 or 2 of the compounds of PFAS.
sometimes it overdoes
Uh,
itself.
And we're by a very small increment, like a part per trillion or something like that. So, but nonetheless, the state of Maine has required everybody, all treatment facilities now have to landfill. So, we're all in the same boat. What we used to sell for $5 a ton, we now have to pay over $200 a ton to dispose of.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's an expensive proposition. As also, because of that, we also had to upgrade our dewatering system as well. So, as I said, we welcome you folks to come visit us, so if
Yeah.
you wanna take a look at that, and take a look at those upgrades that we've done as well.
Okay.
Field trip.
Field trip. Any further questions? All right. Well,
Okay.
thank you very much,
Okay, thank
both of you
you.
guys, for coming
Appreciate it.
this evening.
Thanks, Eric.
I know.
Thanks,
you.
Peter. That's good. That's good info.
Yeah, it's good info. Okay. What was the next thing? It was, stormwater.
Drainage, storm. Oops.
Okay, proposed stormwater ordinance.
You mean to
So-
bring up the?
Yeah. I put a couple comments in.
That was good, that was very helpful.
Okay, so I'm on a loaner laptop, so we're gonna see how well I navigate this
Good luck.
until I fix this. So these are your proposed, stormwater standards, for the land use ordinance. I did want to give you a quick caveat. I have been talking with the planning board. There are some outdated provisions that are related to our subdivision, ordinance. They haven't been updated for quite some time. And so it's something that our third-party consultant who does plan reviews for us for stormwater has noticed. And the planning board has agreed that we do have a contingency of money for expert professionals to help us in crafting changes. So they have agreed to review whatever standards we create here in the land use ordinance to make sure it mirrors well in the subdivision ordinance as well. So this might change, but I would like to get your feedback tonight so we can send this off to Acorn and get them to take a look at this, so. It looks like, you had some comments, I think, for us, Dan,
Yeah, and I remember.
and do you need I can increase
Oh, I
the,
think on part B, it was talking about dwelling changes less than 800 square feet. I'm sorry, dwelling units less than 800 square feet, that they would, must comply with best management practices in the LID guidance. And I thought, should we be a little more specific there and say they have to choose, one of? Because I'm not sure, you know, does the compliance mean I gotta do all 8, right? I mean, what's compliance? So I think we ought to require them to choose one, if we're gonna have them do anything at all, but choose one at what they
Can they
feel is the
choose
most,
Various to make it work?
to make it work. There's,
Whatever.
it lists.
They can do a mixture.
I'll do
whatever.
this, I'll
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was my thought on it.
That was on A?
That was on B.
Oh, I'm
Right,
sorry.
it was for the
Less.
structures that didn't have to go, right, they were just doing something, you're adding 200 feet. So what are you doing? You're potentially changing your stormwater.
Sure.
So what are you doing? And I don't know if there's a way to give them an out from having to do anything, because they may not do absolutely anything, right?
So that could be, could be before the planning board, or it could just be something in the office.
Yeah, I think that could be something in the office, right, luckily.
Right, so this would apply to both in-office as well as to the planning board.
Yeah.
They'd have to demonstrate how they're going to comply with that.
So if somebody was gonna put a shed up, less than 800 square feet,
It says dwelling structures. Dwelling structure includes a shed.
Yeah, it would be just dwelling structures. So that's dwellings.
so dwelling means
A residence,
a bed?
yes. You have to have permanent sanitary, cooking, and sleeping facilities within a room of some sort. So it could be a studio, but it has to have all those requirements.
So if I
Right.
put up a shed bigger than 800 square feet
Yeah.
and store stuff, or I have whatever in there, but as long as I don't have a cooking and bathroom, I don't have to, it's when I have cooking and bathroom, I have to do
Yeah,
this.
it's usually the kitchen is what gets them. They can usually put a bathroom in, and then they have
Okay.
just rooms. We don't know what they're used for. Yoga, bonus room space is what they call it. But it's usually the kitchen. It's when they have permanent cooking facilities is when that becomes a dwelling.
And then that's when we
Require them to, yeah,
go through this effort for stormwater runoff.
yeah.
So is this for an existing home, and they add on less than 800 square feet,
Yeah, this would be for new development,
new development?
yeah.
Is that clear? For dwelling structures less than 800? That's what I was looking at. Does that mean if I have a 600 and I add 195? Or is it just intended to be a new structure?
Yeah, so you'll see on item A, all new structures and additions to existing structures 800 square feet or greater are
Right,
required to submit a site plan layout and address the stormwater impact. But it's for, the dwelling structures is the 800 square feet. We were dealing with ADUs at the time, accessory dwelling units, how we're addressing them. This was a standard that you all created before when we were dealing with ADUs. And so we took that language, we struck it out of that specific area, and it's applying to all dwelling structures.
Okay.
but we're not applying it to all structures.
No, not at this time. I think we captured it in A, that if it's for structures, if it's a cumulative of 800 square feet above, so additions to existing structures, that's where we carried that threshold. But if you want to put a shed, we don't want you to have to, like a 10 by 10 shed, like that shouldn't require a huge investment to do all this. It's
Exactly.
more for the larger type developments.
So maybe we should just add for B, for new dwelling structures, just to make clear, is that
For
correct?
B,
For B, that are less than 800 square feet. Right?
You just want the word new in there.
I think new, just to make sure it's clear that it's nothing existing.
So if you're,
And I guess if you had a 600 square foot,
well, that was my question.
and then you add 100 square feet, you're
It's still
still
under 800,
under 800, that could be.
but you're adding on, it used to be a one-room
yeah.
something or other, and then you're adding a garage. But it's still less than 800.
Okay.
And if it's a dwelling, but if it's
So I
a
guess-
dwelling, then it would apply, even if it
Mhm.
was an existing building.
If it's an
what I
existing building and they're doing an addition that's less than 800 square feet, our language isn't capturing that here, right now.
Right.
If you want to, we can just copy the same language that's above. It says all new structures,
Yeah.
but you can do all new dwelling structures and additions to existing structures that are, well, existing dwelling structures less than 800 square feet, but we haven't addressed that.
I just say for new.
Hmm?
I think the for new, I think the new just clarifies it.
Yeah, I think it's, because we really don't need this every time someone adds, I mean, they're gonna add 100 feet or 200 feet to an existing structure. It should not be changing there.
You're saying it's de minimis, so.
Yeah.
And does in the A, does the 800 square feet or greater apply to what's new, or what's there, or together?
So it's any new structure or additions to the existing structures. So it'd have to be 800 square feet or greater for those additions.
So if the addition is 800 square feet or greater,
Mhm.
It-
Then they would follow.
without regard to what the size of the existing building is?
Yep. Or if it's a vacant lot and then they want to put something that's
Yeah.
1,000 square feet, then,
Sure.
yep.
Yeah.
I think that was the intent from the GPC before, is
Yeah, I
that
think
they didn't
s-
want all these sheds to go through this kind of a process.
Right.
No, not at all.
So, but the additions that you're talking about are additions that have kitchen facilities.
So additions can be anything. So addition is you have a 1-bay garage and you want to make it a 2-bay garage. That addition to that structure,
Right.
if it's over 800 square feet, you're going to have to comply with A. If it's only 400 square feet, we don't care.
And where did the kitchen conversation come into this a little while ago?
That's the definition of a dwelling.
Dwelling.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Which is B. A is broader, it applies to everything.
yes.
B is narrower, just applies to homes.
So if you're building a shed and you add a kitchen to your shed, then
Summer
you
kitchen.
turn it into a
It's
dwelling,
become
right?
a dwelling.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Okay, so if you have a current garage, a current structure, current garage, and you add a bay on, and it's greater than, it's 800 square feet. Or does that mean, or if I built another garage bay, but I had it not attached to anything on the property, that falls into
Yeah, it's
A
not an
still?
addition to the existing structure.
even though it's,
But if is it 800 square feet or is it only 400?
say it's 800.
Then yes, it would still fall under A.
A detached garage.
Right.
That's a new
detached
structure.
barn,
Right,
If it's 400, it would go under B.
yes.
But if it's a barn, it doesn't fit under B. Because B is just
Dwellings.
dwelling structure.
Dwelling, yep.
And B set that way because of the ADUs,
Yeah, because ADUs have to be less than 800.
like, yeah, got it,
Yeah.
okay.
Oh.
Got it.
But my real point there was actually on the number, how do we identify what's compliant? They don't, no, there are a number of different best practices.
Oh, you mean
So do they need to
practices.
follow all of them? Do they need to only follow one of them? Do they need to follow the number that it takes to ensure they don't get, because we're not asking them to do a study,
No.
right? So we're not gonna know if we're not gonna
So,
really know the site.
so
to
we're
say-
giving them an option of things that they can do, so they basically have to.
They have to be creative
pick.
and say, this is what we're picking to
We're
to
picking
comply.
from the list.
Yeah.
What do they have to meet? What's the goal of B?
Yeah, the goal of B is to control the rate of,
Oh, I understand
yeah,
that, but I
for
mean,
for rain.
how do we know when
Yeah, in some cases, they say, you know, based off the distance of how far the structure impervious surface is from a road or a property line, you might be able to use a swale, you might be able to use a forested canopy. It's a bunch of different recommendations. It's very site-specific, depending on what they're proposing.
So this is where it's intention, so the way I see this is, to answer your question, Dan, is that the intention and intent is there, but we're not putting in, we're not forcing that study.
Right.
So we're going off of basically best practices that have
Right.
worked and asking residents to pick one of those one or whatever they want to do of those best practices, but we're not measuring flow.
Right.
And we can't, if a neighbor complains, they've done something, and it may just be that something didn't work, but it was on the list of best practices. So I think by default, because we're not asking for the study, it's almost like it's a best practice utilization pro forma versus a, you know, measurable, a measurable,
Yeah, I guess I'm just hung up on making sure that we don't have someone out there feeling they gotta meet all the different best practices listed.
no.
I gotta put a swale in, and I gotta put in this, and I gotta put in that, and that's not the intent. The intent is
No.
that they have to pick
Pick.
one,
Pick one,
pick one or more.
yeah,
And I think we just should make that a little clearer.
yeah.
So that's the way I read it,
So how do
boy, I
they-
have to pick them all.
Let's say it's just going to the code office, doesn't need to go to planning board. How will you evaluate, you know, is it just, you know, do you have a little chart that you're gonna say 24 by 24 foot, I can figure out that's so much water, and therefore I'm thinking that's enough, or that's not enough?
Yeah, it's gonna be very site-specific. You know, certainly, you know, rooftop runoff can go directly, you can direct it into a wetland or existing wetland on the site, as a way to capture. It's a natural rain garden. But you couldn't do that to the driveway, so that's not an option for them, to do. So again, it's very site-specific. Sometimes they might need to plant trees to do a canopy that's in close proximity to a neighbor, or area where there's steep grades. Other times, they might just need a gradual grassy swale because they're so far away from the next adjoining property, and it's not gonna cause runoff concerns. So it all depends on the site, and we can just evaluate it based off that and give recommendations to the owner. Certainly, you know, this is going to be, you know, people do check the permits all the time, and if they disagree with what we think is an appropriate plan, they can appeal those permits if they so choose. But I think the intent here is, we're not trying to be overburdened with this
Right.
section.
Right.
It's not as quantifiable, that you have measurable results that you can go to as, are they meeting the best management practices? And we currently do that for all development sites in Kennebunkport when they go through site plan review. It's, you know, controlling erosion on the site during development and after development. What's the plan afterwards? How is it impacting the site in general? So that's how I view it.
Who determines the best practices that are chosen?
Yeah, so I mean, there are practices that are stipulated in this manual that we're referencing, and it'll be up to the code enforcement officer to make that determination if they're satisfying that manual requirement.
Is there any footnote or anything that could make it clear that the code enforcement officer understands that this manual that they are following, that if there are 10 requirements, that not all 10 have to be met, but is there some way of limiting or giving guidance to the code enforcement officer so they don't try?
It's not too burdensome.
It's not too burdensome.
Yeah, the only thing that I would say is I would caution about putting a one, because in some cases, people might need more than one, but if they
Right.
say, well, look, the ordinance says only one,
Right.
I don't want them to think that they can just,
Right,
this is gonna be a little bit more of a fluid situation.
okay.
And the code enforcement officer is a person who would say,
Yeah.
no, rain garden is not sufficient, you also need a swale or
And, and the applicant, you know, if there is a disagreement with the code enforcement officer, which this does happen on a case-by-case basis, they can go through the administrative appeal process if we deny the permit, saying, we don't think that your stormwater meets sufficiency. It can go to the Board of Appeals and it can get overturned. The code enforcement officer's decision can get overturned from time to time if they think it's unreasonable.
And we are having a conversation that's recorded, which is indicating what the intent is in this language. So,
But that's not,
Yeah,
yeah, that's, I think that's loose.
yeah.
I don't think that would be binding enough.
I don't think the courts are going to,
Yeah.
we're having discussions about this, but we can't predict for the future what, there might be other types of situations where we didn't think of the intent.
I think that's where when we're looking at this, and just like we look at anything that we're doing for all the ordinances, we want to look at the test of time, right? And I think that's what you guys are doing right now, is you're trying to play it forward, you know, in a decade or 2 decades from now. How would somebody interpret this? And like Galen says, there is the appeal process. We don't want to always set up things that would say, well,
Yeah.
it would go there. We want to try to clean it up as much
Yeah,
as we
we-
can on our end.
No offense, we like to keep them out of business, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Not have to go to appeals,
Right.
so. Okay, I'm
Okay.
somewhat satisfied with that.
Yeah.
I think that, I mean, it's gonna be reviewed, I mean, if I was gonna do an addition, I'd come down and see you and say, this is what I'm doing, I'm thinking of doing this as the best practice, what do you think?
Yeah.
I'd wanna get the buy-in, right, before I spend any money trying to have it documented in the drawings and stuff I might need.
And again, some developments in Kennebunkport, people do spend money on professionals. We do not question as professionals if they are licensed engineers, like
That's their due.
that's what they're there for. If they say this is going to work,
Yeah, absolutely.
Their licenses.
yeah, they're licensed to do so. So,
Yeah. You got that stamp. Okay, the next one is on my favorite subject of the buffers.
Yep,
I couldn't, give one last shot at it. See if I can convince you. So, what,
What, C?
so what I was suggesting was, because I was thinking, okay, there are definitely places, I know, in Farm and Forest, where we could not have a 50-foot buffer on one side of the structure, of existing homes, right? So I'm assuming they built it there either because they wanted it there, or they were forced there due to other constraints, wetlands, whatever it might be. So I know those exist, but I'm also thinking, what if, having a conflict? What if you want to put in, solar panels across your roof, right? But the best way to do that is to have it closer to, within the setbacks, but closer to one side, right? Because all this is trying to do is make sure that whatever you do on your property, you don't send stormwater to your neighbor. You keep it on your property. The buffer is certainly one way to do that, right? But there are others in that manual that give you other ways.
Yeah, I don't know why we,
So I'm just saying, why
Yeah.
force someone into a specific method versus choosing others and maybe having to choose 2 or 3 because of what they want to do to offset what that buffer could provide, pretty much for free, right? But there's other benefits that the homeowner is going to achieve because of whatever, X, Y, and Z. The solar will just work better because he's got further distance away from the trees. I don't know, but it just seems to me just to be like we're regulating one way, but there are other options, and at the end of the day, it's all about keeping the stormwater on their property.
I would say you would just divert back to what we just talked about on A and B. I get your point, you're pulling out a specific, actually, you're sort of pulling out a specific thing, and you're saying for Farm and Forest, there's only one solution,
Right.
and it's a 50-foot buffer, and that's not true. So you're actually, you might be trying to achieve something else with a 50-foot buffer.
Right.
And if you are, we should call it out, and we should discuss that versus, because they should be able to do a swale or whatever, build a pond or whatever
Yeah,
they
and
need to do
And if you drive through what our farm and forest is today, you certainly will see places that have, more than a 50-foot buffer. But you'll also see, a home, 60 feet off the street, right, with the front lawn. That looks just like a home in another location, right? So,
Well,
which
because
to me is
it costs money to run utilities in.
sure, I mean,
So
but to
that's
me,
why
that's the rural structure.
Right.
That's what I see for our town. So it's not like it's outside of that scope.
Does each side of the lot mean 4 sides of a lot?
If it's a 4-sided lot.
Right.
Could
So
be
when
6-sided lot.
Yeah.
when you're saying if it's a four-sided, so the qualification then is if the abutting the road, is that considered to be a side? Or are we talking about 3, or are we talking, that
All
would
4.
also?
Yep.
All four.
So to put this into perspective, so we listened to Maine DEP when they came and talked to us about low impact design standards for what we would like to see in Kennebunkport. We all discussed the concept of having the fingerprinting. So this is when you're trying to clear a lot to at least keep a certain percentage of a completely wooded lot from being fully clear cut, which I think we all agree is not a good practice to maintain. And so in your subdivision standards, you do currently have a 50-foot buffer requirement for any parcel that is abutting a town road. They have to keep a 50-foot non-disturbance section there. So this standard is keeping in line with how we treat subdivisions,
Already.
which as we learn through the state legislature, they are now exempting certain types of development from going through subdivision review. And so the reason this is only in farm and forest, this requirement, is because there's a 3-acre minimum requirement in farm and forest. So these are a lot larger parcels where you would have a lot more land to hopefully allow for a 50-foot buffer in those sections.
Well, I support this language. I guess one of the questions I would ask is, if somebody came in and said, well, that 50-foot buffer on this particular side is going to impact my ability to develop this land, is it possible to say, well, that diminished area perhaps would be added to another part,
To swap
lot. So you just swap it out,
Yeah.
basically. So you have, if you have, let's just say 1/8 of an acre, maybe is dedicated to forest, if you have it on 4 sides. But you find that there's a problem with that, which impacts the development. So then you would then take that 1/8 of an acre and add it to either the back or the other side, or a little bit on the front, so that you don't lose the impact of the forest. My worry is that people have expressed in the past and currently that how important the green space is in this town, and the beauty of it. And if there are going to be developments coming in which allow much more density, I think that any chance to protect a green area is really important. So that would be my suggestion, is I support this, and I would ask that everyone, who disagrees might be open to the idea of having language which allows us to add that area to another portion in the lot. So you maintain that total area of green space.
I think if you were talking, if I think about like what I'm hearing from Dan, and then what you said, Anne Marie, and also what Galen feedback here, if E was specifically for developments in farm and forest, then that to me sort of makes more sense, because then it stops the clear cut. It leaves, because you are going to be putting more houses, in essence, in that space. But when we're talking for just like a homeowner, or a homeowner that's splitting off their lot for a child, that's where I I would want to give them more freedom on location, and what they want to personally do with their space. I know, having some property that there's ledge, there's wetland, there's areas that you just physically can't build. And so it's not like all property here is really buildable. And so I think from a development standpoint, that makes sense, like a 50-foot buffer. And I think when I go back to when the main group came in and did the presentation to us, it was more on a development discussion. But I think I would ask the committee to maybe think about, is there a way to look at this via two lenses? One as a development going into farm and forest, and then maybe word it differently if it was a specific landowner cutting off a lot or two lots.
I mean, for me, that the state is, what used to be subject to a subdivision requirements are not going to be subject anymore. It means we're going to have greater, front lawn potential, suburban kind of look than we've had in the past.
On the 1820s.
Yes,
Yeah.
because of the subdivision.
Yeah.
Does that not apply on a private road? So if someone puts 12 lots off of a public road, all bets are off in terms of the buffer?
So the buffer only applies if the parcel is abutting a town road, not a private road.
Right. So just the guy out front?
Yeah.
Just the lot out front?
Yeah. But again, think of the situation, people can get creative and they can condo the lot, and now they are exempt from subdivision review. So there again, the subdivision standards will not apply in that case. Family subdivisions are another one. People break it off for family, and in 5 years after owning it, they can just sell the lot. They didn't build on it. There's workouts around subdivision law.
Yeah.
And we saw a lot more of them be created by the state.
Would it be possible to go with Ann's approach to have this as a requirement but allow a swapping, a flexibility if the configuration of the property makes that impracticable?
We can certainly look at that. There was these little brackets here for consider exemption if no other buildable area in the zone. I think the most common that I would see that you could grant an exemption for cutting in that zone would be for septic placement, because that is something that is so difficult to do. I think that's something that can be looked at. Because you would have to get a variance if you get too close to the property line with a septic tank. You might need a state variance, just because of being so close to another neighbor.
Yeah.
So that's an option.
Could we include something like ledge or wetlands as part of the 50-foot buffer, rather than having it be just trees? Does that make sense? So if a property has a lot of ledge.
Well, it talks about existing forested areas, so it's limited to.
Right.
So if it's just ledge and there's nothing growing there, it's just rocks, this doesn't apply.
Right.
It's talking about trying to save existing forested areas
Okay.
as much as possible, while still giving development opportunities to the.
Do we have a definition of forested area in a general, that would apply, that someone could point to and say, yeah, that's a forested area?
I don't know if we have a definition for that in the land use ordinance. We have forested wetland.
Right, that's,
Are we gonna cause
yeah, I
a
don't,
benefit
what's-
if someone
what's a
sees these
forested
coming
wet-
and then they
what's a
just go,
forested area? I got
Oh,
4
no.
trees in
Yeah.
or I have to have 100 trees in that
Right.
section.
Well, here's another situation. say I'm gonna sell my lot to a developer, and we see this coming down the pike. And before it goes into ordinance, I clear cut,
Oh, yeah, that's,
because we know we know in talking to some other towns that that's happened, right? When they put regulations like this. People that were on that edge could just go in before it got ordinance and clear cut. So you sort of create, so that's why there's, I don't know if that's a real thing or not. I know it happened in some areas, but I don't know if it would be a real thing for this. But it would be good to get the
It's always been
definition.
on the books for subdivisions.
you're right.
Yeah, it's a different,
I think for a single family home, single lot that somebody owns, I don't think we ought to be having the buffer there. I'd be more proposed to say you got to keep a certain amount of trees, which has an impact as well on your
Right.
construction costs, because they gotta
Yeah.
work around stuff. You're gonna pick certain trees to keep. And the whole idea of clear cuts makes it easy and quick to get something built, right?
And right now, as long as you're not in the shoreline zone, there's no restriction.
so in the, if
But there's
the,
shoreline zones out in Farm and Forest.
so
What's
get,
that?
There's shoreline zones.
No, but outside the shoreline zone.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Right, I'll say.
You're permitted to clear cut even if it was totally forested area.
Yeah.
so in 1826, if it stayed as is, would that get a way of regulations like this? Or it doesn't impact our setbacks, but would it void things like this?
What would void? You know, you're treating-
1826.
No,
when
you're
they-
treating everyone the same, so you're allowed to apply regulations as part of your standards, as long as you're not treating single-family different than other housing types.
Okay,
So we still have home rule over that for
okay.
now.
I think if you have, would the language consider exemption? That sentence, would that, you have it in brackets?
Yeah,
Is-
because we wanted to talk about it
Sure.
in the
Okay.
future.
So could it be that that sentence is as it would be written in the ordinance? Or would the language be different? Would there be a sentence that says, consider exemption if no weather, et cetera? So if that would be the case, I think E could stand in its entirety with the bracketed last sentence.
But I wouldn't grant a full exemption. I would want to, preserve forest on the property to the extent that,
Yes, oh, yeah,
as opposed to 3 acres being clear cut.
Yes.
Because
Right.
and,
Yeah.
with the new laws, this is going to become, people are wanting to build out there. The density is, it's not a growth area. Do we have any growth area in Farm and Forest?
No.
Yeah.
That's all rural, but remember when we spoke with Representative Gear, the workforce housing density bonus applies across the town, unless they change the language. It's planning to go all across the town, and
Yeah.
that I can see as an issue.
Then
So
I-
it could happen in the
So it could happen,
farm and
and
forest.
Farm and forest, so
this would be one way to protect
we need to protect
the look and
it,
feel of the town.
yeah.
But it has to be a development. Affordable housing development, not affordable housing.
No, workforce housing,
Workforce housing.
which
That
is a
new-
higher income level than affordable
But still
housing.
has to be a development
So workforce
Yes.
housing
Right.
is
for the density
Defined.
bonus and all that.
by the
Correct.
income.
It can't be,
What's your
Yes,
definition of
You
development?
have a higher income on workforce
one's gonna go to the
housing.
planning board. and
It's
meet their-
interesting,
their
I was looking
development
at the state of New Hampshire.
The language
I-
doesn't say that.
It took the development
I'm
rights
talking
away
over.
from
Our language can say that, and they can sue us.
So
I like your spirit.
Even if misguided.
So
We're trying to do
workforce
common sense
housing
stuff here.
Yep,
is defined based upon the income, total income of the people living in the house.
correct.
It
Whether it's
does-
going to be rental or they're going to own it, yes.
Right, it doesn't matter how many people are living in the house.
No.
So you could have, I don't know, 10 young people living there making $20,000 each, and that would work.
Yeah. It's the combined household income, so it depends on what that, in that case, maybe not, depending on how many people are the owners of the property. Usually it's a couple.
Right, yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking that it doesn't have to be the normal couple with a couple of kids. It could be,
Well, household usually means whoever owns the home.
okay,
It's not, it wouldn't be like all your kids' income and your income. It would be who's on the deed, it would be the household.
okay,
hus-
so the person or
Yeah, the
husband
people
and
that
wife,
own-
if they both
or
working,
whomever.
would need to, or,
2 people own a home together, 3 people own a home together.
Well, if it's 6 people,
I mean, more people
If they're-
could own it together, I suppose.
I'd have to get a clarity on what that actually is.
So if I could go back,
Mhm.
Alex, to E,
Yep.
the primary sentence, the first sentence, and then ignoring the brackets. Having listened to some of the concerns that have been voiced, do you have a suggestion as to what that first sentence, if it could have any amendment which would assist in the placement? Unless that is an understood concept and that someone would come and say, I can't meet this, I need to move this force to section. Do we have sufficient language elsewhere in our building, in our code enforcement, that would allow the code enforcement officer to permit a septic area, within the forested buffer?
No, you would really should add a separate sentence after that sentence that would just say exceptions include, placement of, for utilities,
Critical
for,
infrastructure.
for septic. You'd have to put in something there that says, like, you have to show us evidence that there's no other reasonable alternatives on the site to make this work, that you need to go into this 50-foot buffer.
So could we concentrate, is it possible to have a conversation about that sentence? Because I feel, it's interesting, I noticed that in Wells, there's a subdivision development, which is, well, one of the things that I wanted to clarify is that workforce housing is different from affordable housing. And so the workforce housing issues, this is a development that they're starting in Wells, and the homes are small, and they're about 1,300 square feet, I think, and they're averaging around 550,000 per unit. Of course, they're built close together, and I wanted to drive over and have a look and see how that worked out, but it made me realize just how vital this particular area is with the greenery, the gardens, the trees, the wildlife, the birds, everything that draws people here. Sometimes not everyone who develops a piece of land wants to have a garden or wants to have a big lawn, they want something that's easier than that. So I feel that having a buffer, which was wooded, as you have forested, would be really important language to include. But in respect to all the other considerations that are being voiced, thank you for coming up with something to discuss.
Yeah, I don't know, we had a conversation about the trees for the tree ordinance. And that came back to personal properties. And I feel like when I'm thinking, I'm listening and thinking, and I feel that we're sort of skating that edge right now.
Well, the thing is, Mary Beth, is that has really been taken from us. There is a mandate coming from people who are not in this room, who aren't living here, who have said, we want to do this. And a part of me wonders to what extent that is assisting developers' interests as opposed to the interests of the people in the community.
Yeah.
And I think it's really gone over the edge when you have the state saying, you don't get to pick, we're doing this. And so I feel like we have to be defensive.
I agree.
I feel we
Times
have,
have changed.
yeah, I think times have changed, I agree with that. I'm just thinking through the difference between a developer and a homeowner. And I feel that the homeowner sort of losing, it's almost like, I have to think about it more. But I know we went here when we had the tree conversation, and it's very similar in my regard to the tree conversation that we had at the board level. But
think-
I get
Yeah.
exactly where you're
I think we're
coming from.
sympathetic to the homeowner, like the resident that sincerely wants to build or expand from their existing residence. Unfortunately, the law is not really giving us that ability to show that differentiation or impartiality to the resident, and I think that's the problem the struggle that we're finding ourselves in right now.
What denotes the 50-foot? Is 50-foot a magic number?
The 50-foot is what we had in our subdivision regulations. It was determined that number was the adequate, sufficient buffer that you need to really have a canopy necessary to diffuse stormwaters during rain events. That's the minimum standards that you need is at least 50 feet for an effective buffer to work for stormwater management.
I like what you've written, Galen. I mean, it's certainly a start for a conversation, but
Yeah.
I think thank you, it's captured what, I think many of us have been concerned about.
It captures the physical constraints, but like the one I mentioned where it may be beneficial for solar panels and so forth to have the property closer than the 50-foot on one side, wouldn't necessarily meet that, right? It's not a physical constraint, it's more of
Usage.
an effective or efficiency
It's
type
what, it's
versus-
constraining what you want to use your own property for.
Yeah.
Which
Well,
is
true.
so that's where I struggle. So I understand, like, completely get what Galen said, what the state's doing in terms of, the home rule and everything that we've talked about. The only way I'm looking at this right now is just from the property owner. And that's
Agreed.
where, when we put things on the books to compensate for what the state's doing to us, and something takes it away from a property owner, their property rights of what they can and can't do, I just really, I completely trust me, I get all the conversations, but I'm just telling you, that's where I have struggling, I struggle.
What we're doing here with this exception that Galen's just written as a start for a conversation, perhaps again, with these items. But the thing is that this is not unheard of in the town. We have ordinances, we have requirements with the construction that we have that's going on. What we're recognizing is that the farm and forest zone is absolutely a target for development. And we're concentrating on being the homeowner, but we're anticipating it might not be a homeowner, but it's someone who has the intent of selling it. And in both cases, I think the concerns might be met with language that said, and I think Dan had a concern about maybe a family member wanting to build an additional structure.
Mhm.
And this, I think, allows you to do that on 3 acres. If we were talking about a 5,000 square foot area, it'd be a whole different conversation. But there's 3 acres is adequate to allow for forested area, and additional use of the land with perhaps an accessory dwelling but I think that this also means that this is a conversation for people to have with regards to how they're, basically you're either going to create a moonscape, which is the easiest thing to develop, or you're going to have an area that preserves some of the beauty. You just make an intent, it's an intent that you're following. It's an interesting conversation that we're having. It's a very timely conversation, and it's all over this country. It's been interesting to be a part of a board. When I was a part of a board in New Hampshire, and we were dealing with these topics, and we made a personal decision that of our 184-acre farm, we put 149 acres into a forever wild easement. And that was the only thing that we could really do that would contribute to what we thought needed to happen. So that left that forested, and it's done. And for, that's always gonna be an option in anywhere in the state of Maine, that people can make that same decision. But right now, you know, people are wanting to build. I would ask everyone to consider protecting the 50-foot forested buffer.
And was there objection to Anne Marie's suggestion of moving that buffer, like increasing the buffer in another area and not necessarily requiring it on all sides?
Wouldn't that be included? Is it perhaps, Galen, in what you've written already?
It's sort of implied, but it's not saying it, but it's saying, like, there's an exemption to the clearing of the 50-foot buffer if they determine that there's no other reasonable alternative to the site placement. So in theory, you shouldn't be just clear-cutting the lot where you've determined that it's not suitable for development. That's just... I think most folks in Kennebunkport, when I talk to them that live in the farm and forest zone, they do value and appreciate the farm and forest zone. They appreciate that it is very much rural living in that area of town. And I think they would like to preserve it at all cost. I will say the developers, by and large, that have done subdivisions out in that part of town, they have generally complied with the fingerprinting of their lots as well, because they, I think, see the value in having more of secluded type privacy for the homes. I think it's increasing the home values, to be honest with you, for those areas, because it's quiet type of living that people appreciate and value. So I don't think this standard is really going against what is really out in that part of town.
Well,
But I can understand
Yeah.
there's site-specific.
there's
where we do need to
site-specific,
give-
and there's just other places that they didn't do that, and the homes are pretty darn close to the roads.
Yep.
Right, that's just, I mean, that's the way they built them many years ago, right? So it's not, this is not out of character, but nor is it truly the character of that area,
Yeah.
right? Because it's a mix. That's
Well,
kind
a
of
lot
what the beauties of it.
Yeah, the old neighborhoods, the old houses are close to the
I
road.
guess kind of going back to the subdivision piece, because I don't recall that we couldn't maintain our subdivision regs if it's affordable housing development. Because it talks about subdivision and it increased it to 5 from 3, except for something else that was not quite clear.
Subdivision is only
Please.
going to start applying for splitting of lots. If they keep it a condo lot, it does not trigger subdivision.
Unless they go over 5 in the lot, right, or something like that.
For the dwellings, number of dwellings in a period of year, yes,
in a
they still
building.
5 years, yeah.
Dwellings in a building,
Yeah, ours was 3 before, right?
Yeah,
yeah.
So now it's 5.
So I
in a
believe-
5-year period.
They're in a 5-year period.
So they could just keep staging it, and
Yeah,
that's, I'm concerned.
Yeah. Well, if you look at this Wells subdivision, it's condominiums. There, everything's being sold as a condominium.
No, that won't happen here, remember? Remember? It's not gonna happen here. If it does, it'll be really cheap.
yeah.
Because there's a supply. Yes, that's unfortunate.
Okay.
I don't think we have resolution on this.
Does anyone else have any feedback from
Any
the
other
board?
I like what you've written
Yeah.
as a start.
I do too.
I don't know what Acorn's going to say, so they might give you a totally different suggestion.
could we start with this?
You can start with it and see what it looks like. Timeline-wise, I need to see, I need to talk to Lori to see when the deadline is for me to submit the language to get on the June ballot, because I think that would be our intent, is try to get on the June ballot.
Backs up a week every year, so I think we're almost,
I know.
it used to be like March or April, and now it's January or
We
December.
passed it.
So
Yeah, we went by it.
we had talked about, and I guess we've abandoned since it's not here, I don't remember, changing the definition of lot coverage to be the same in shoreland and elsewhere in town, which is
Yeah,
common in most towns, but
Ye-
unique here.
Yeah, I know we didn't really get into that discussion yet on if we wanted to go that route, did we want to explore increasing those percentages in your more village areas of town if we make the change? So the change would be from going from building structures is considered lot coverage to all impervious surfaces, such as driveways, patios, decks, would all be considered part of lot coverage. And so if we changed it, it's right now standard 20% across the board in all your zones. Your more urban areas where there's been development, smaller parcels, such as the village residential area, those areas are generally probably not conforming. They're over 20% generally. So should we increase those numbers? We didn't really have that discussion yet, but we will have to update as well the setbacks. And I don't know when we want to do that.
Would these things be impacted by 1826 or the correction bill?
We will have to deal with the setback issue with 1829. We will have to address that.
Explain, please.
We can't treat setback requirements for housing types, we can't treat them differently. And so for duplexes, we have a 40-foot front setback versus a 20-foot for a single family. So we have to keep them all uniform.
Sure.
But then we're also we're gonna update that table anyway with the density if we have to comply. Right now, I'm trying to advocate for the legislature, hopefully, to fully fund what the actual cost is going to be to implement what they're asking us to do, because there's a lot to this that's not just related to ordinance adoption, but from an administrative perspective for the town, there's probably gonna be more funding needed.
You didn't read there was no cost impact?
Pardon?
I said, you didn't read the no cost impact in the bill?
Yeah.
That was their finding, I think.
No impact, no cost to them.
No, no cost.
No cost to the
community.
government,
They had to-
the state of
They had to
Maine.
include that, otherwise they would have to fund it.
So I don't know if you want to address that now, or if we want to wait to address that for November. I'm thinking November is going to be our 1829. A lot of our cleanup language that we're going to work on is during that time. It gives us
Yeah.
more time to discuss and go into the deep dive of things. There might be some minor parking design standards that we've noticed that may need to be addressed. We can certainly talk about the next meeting in January, if you're all up for it.
Okay. For potentially the next November in 1829, would we be considering things that other towns seem to be doing? Or potentially other towns are in the midst of looking at? For example, reducing our growth area, or, because you're looking at it from what the state's not looking at, and what no one will be able to look at, the planning board or anyone, or zoning, or code, traffic flow. So for example, if we have an area in town that's highly congested, would we, and it's in the growth area, would we kick that out of the growth area just because we wouldn't want to see these multiples come forward? I didn't know, because we see some other towns starting to do these things, and evidently they're making moves, so it must be okay, right? Because they're looking about making ordinance changes.
I think in the case of, was it Scarborough, I believe,
In Brunswick.
They were actually undergoing their comprehensive plan. Like their adoption. They didn't amend it. They were like, this is, we're
Right, they
seeing
were
this
about
happen.
to.
We were about to, and they were like, look, we're changing it now.
Yeah.
Could we amend our comprehensive plan?
There's a process. It's a process.
Could we get it done by
It's- yeah.
November?
It's a process. The concern I have about doing that is you're putting it up against the new regulations. It'd be nice to really get some type of legal understanding of the power and validity of a current comprehensive plan that was approved by the state versus changes in state law and their impact, right?
Because if you amend your what Dan's thinking is, if you amend the comp plan, then your
Open it
existing
up.
comp plan is out the window, so now you have to comply with everything now. So
Oh.
Dan wants to know, are we sort of,
We protect it in
Grandfathered.
a way.
So you want to protect us with
We have
some
a
of
growth,
our,
we have a growth,
some of our
our growth
setbacks
limits are in our
for the
plan.
caps, for the growth
for the
caps.
Growth
growth
caps and
caps.
others.
And that's where what we heard, what I heard was your growth caps. And so, yes, so your argument is, we have growth caps, it's in our comprehensive plan, and the state blessed our comprehensive plan.
Right,
Comprehensive plan is thou shalt not do anything that's not in there, right?
right.
And now the state comes in and says, oh, I'm sorry, I blessed that, but you no longer have, you can no longer growth cap in the growth area.
Right.
And that's what
You
we
can't
heard.
enact it.
Yeah,
I'm
that-
saying we enacted it.
Okay,
It's done.
it's done.
Already done.
But
It's
it's
not-
been-
We're not doing anything new. It's something that's been approved for many years.
Okay.
But the way the law works is it continually evolves, and what happens in the future overrides what happened in the past.
Yeah,
Except
So if
the state
If
overrode
the
us.
state decides in its wisdom to no longer have growth caps, then our, our provisions are, essentially meaningless. And I would think we would want to conform, not that we want to, but that our job, and we now have a comprehensive plan that is no longer, people can no longer look to it and say, this is what we do, because state law has changed. So, I mean,
Possibly.
yeah,
What about the whole idea of the historic district? I mean, we do have historic, some parts of our town that are in the National Historic Register, although I guess it doesn't really mean a whole lot. But can we, have like in Kennebunk where they have a historic commission or something that deals with, like Summer Street and the homes on Summer Street. Is that something that we can set up in our town too?
Yeah, I've been working with, there's two architects in particular that have done a lot of work in Kennebunkport, and especially in the historic district area, and I've asked them if they'd be willing to volunteer their time to come to the board and present what you can look at, educate you all on what architectural design standards you'd be interested in and looking at. And I've already gotten a copy of Kennebunk's historical design standards. I have not read it, but it's on my desk to be reviewed over the holiday season. So it's definitely something we can explore. I think this would either be a November or a June of '27 ordinance
Change.
amendment, because you
So,
have.
so would that be an issue with 1829? I mean,
No, I think we do have the ability to create historic design standards. These were two districts that were created in the 1970s, like they're historically significant. The state thought so, as well the federal government thought so. And so as long as we're treating the standards the same for all house types, I don't think we're running afoul in creating those performance standards for historical
So
properties.
in the historical area, if we determined that you have to have a 20,000 square foot lot for a house, that would no
No,
longer,
that's not a,
That's not a design standard for historical. It's the structure itself to make sure aesthetically it is.
it's a look and feel.
oh, okay.
It's copacetic with what's around the surrounding area of what was in that historic district. We can put those standards on, but just saying lot standards, we can't argue
Okay,
that.
so if you had 5 units on a 20,000 square, on a 5,000 square foot lot, they would have to be aesthetically,
Mhm.
and
Look like everyone else and,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do we have that at Goose Rocks?
So
have
you
no
only
flat
have for
roofs.
non-conforming structures on non-conforming lots, they have a certain roof pitch they have to comply with. It's either the surrounding neighborhood or it's a thick 3-1 pitch, I think,
Yeah,
a roof.
that came in after,
After the Twin Towers?
Yeah.
after the Twin Towers went up.
Which some architects would like to talk about that because they found it,
Yeah, because of the way.
yeah, it doesn't look aesthetically as pleasing either, so that's something that maybe it's part of an ongoing conversation we have with the architects who've done projects in Kennebunkport, what they're seeing.
Yeah, some do it very well, some
Yeah.
botch it.
But
It
currently,
depends how much they want to fit inside the house, that's really,
but currently, we don't have a local historical district, right? It's just, we have homes that are on the National Historic Registry, so that
Right.
So they're in the
it protects
registry.
them, to protects them from the federal government coming in and knocking them down for
No.
whatever.
No, so,
Doesn't-
we applied
can-
for it.
you can deny, we did as a town, we did apply for those 2 historic districts and they were approved. You can knock down historic structures. However, there is a provision, that if any structure was built before 1930, and you receive a demo, you apply for a demo permit for a structure that's in a historic district from 1930, you have to notify the abutters and also advertise it in a paper before you can issue, the code enforcement officer can issue that demo permit. That's the only historic protections we have right now.
I see.
Yeah, but what I was saying was that the registry protects the homeowner in that house from the federal government itself, coming in and for whatever reason, having to do something in that area that would impact
Like
that
eminent
home.
domain?
If they had a eminent domain, absolutely.
Oh.
Or if you're the homeowner and there was a storm and you took federal funds, then you are required to sort of rebuild it to its, you can't change it.
Mm.
But if you're not using federal funds, you can do anything you want to that,
Yeah.
that's my understanding,
Yeah.
right? So,
I don't know what the federal impacts, but yeah, I know
that's.
if you take
It
taxes,
takes-
grant
yeah,
money,
The state, if they spent their own money, could do
Right.
it on eminent domain. If they use federal funding, they can't. So it's, really has very limited, it's really when, this town says, we wanna make this a historical district, that you can put all these design standards on. And my understanding is that that was voted down the one time they
Okay.
went for it.
So if we go back to things we could potentially do, then we can't really go and touch any of our growth areas or anything that's in our comp plan currently that would help us maybe alleviate some of the density growth. So it's things like, it's more what we just talked about, what Jane brought up, the historical part it's more of a aesthetic look, feel. It won't change the density happening, it will just change a look and feel of what the density looks like.
Just in those 2 districts. unless
Just in
we
those
wanted
2
more.
districts.
I don't know what those
Well, then we would have
exact
to,
neighborhoods are.
yeah, it's Ocean, part of Ocean Ave and then comes down North Street, I think, right?
yeah, it's on Ocean where Walker's Point is, that's the Cape Arundel, that zone, that's one of the districts, and then we're in the other one, the village.
but is it?
It's like the whole village?
Is it a whole like triangle, including the parts in between, like School Street, or is it just here and
Yeah,
here?
Just
there's
the
a
2.
part, I'm actually working to, when I have time, I'm trying to GIS map out, that way you have a layer that will be on your
That'd be
your
great.
town layer, that way people can see, okay, these are the 2 districts. And we can attach files to it to show this is all the documentation that's related to this. So we're working on that, but yeah, it does encompass just a larger area than just Ocean Ave and Dock Square. It does branch out a bit.
And so there's nothing that any other town's doing that we would want to jump on the bandwagon? Nobody else has had like an aha moment that we could do things to sort of counter some of the density impact potential?
I haven't seen
No.
for density, no.
Okay.
So could you have another, I don't know, it seems like the towns do all towns have growth, transition, and rural? Is that it? Is those are 3?
No, so your growth areas can be customizable. Some people have commercial zones, they have suburban commercial, they have, residential 1, residential 2, depending on the density, urban residential. So you can name your areas whatever you want, and as long as they're designated,
But so growth
Yeah.
is, you could call it something other than growth and it would still be growth?
Yeah, you can, your growth area is where you're directing most of your growth to.
Okay, so
Some other communities, they might say urban residential growth area.
so like Dock Square
Yeah,
is right now part of the growth area.
yes.
I don't really think of that as being a growth area because it has grown already.
Stay tuned.
So, what?
I said, stay tuned
Yeah.
with new densities.
But what I'm saying is, can that be the no-growth area? Can we
No.
call it that, or call it?
No. So I think
No,
what we just said is that it's in the comp plan, so we can't go back and change.
So we'd have to
But,
change our
but the
comp
state can change our comp plan, but we can't change our.
Exactly.
Right.
So your growth
Well,
area
Change it
includes,
instantly.
Now you're talking.
They could change the game.
Now
but
you
yeah,
got it.
we-
yeah, the growth area usually includes most of your sewer infrastructure.
Yeah, but
That's
the
the
idea
intent,
is
right.
to, and we have seen, since the sewer went in, we have seen growth in these areas. So that doesn't mean we have to continue to grow in those areas.
You really, your design standards, your dimensional standards are what are going to dictate how much growth you can have.
And so that's why when we were talking last week and people were mentioning how many permits we've had in the growth area. And they were like, well, historically, you haven't been growing in your growth area. Well, because we haven't changed density, that would now make it appealing to grow in the growth area. So that's the nuance, that
It hasn't been possible.
it hasn't been
because
possible before, but now, what did Rep say? Pencil it out. If we penciled it out, it would now be possible because of the density, right? So that.
And the
that would
size of the
change it.
lot.
And the size
What's
of the
our
lot.
current down in,
4,000?
Down there, 10,000, I think,
10,000.
and most of those are not 10,000.
right,
No.
but now they go to 5,000.
Yeah,
So they could be conforming.
but they need parking, and most of those lots, as you know, are all built where you get in the parking.
It's interesting.
There's been some people that have been interested in doing some things in Dock Square, and they can't with parking requirements.
Well, they could do parking underneath and then go up.
Yeah,
Sure.
pay the money, yeah, you can do anything you want.
It's all changing. So what is it, there's a development in Portland now, 38
38
38
stories.
stories?
Yeah.
What's that?
The new building in Portland that just got approved.
38 stories.
What's the tallest, is it living quarters, like apartments?
I'm sure it's for affordable and workforce housing.
So there was something that I read about 14,000 feet.
14
What's-
feet?
14.
14 feet,
14
you can go
feet,
14
not
feet, building height, you can exceed your building height by 14 feet for affordable housing development.
Okay, and then that, in the article I read, the person was saying, and I don't know what the situation is with the fire trucks here, but in some
We're
places.
fine.
We are
We're
fine,
fine.
we can go up
We
14.
got the colony, we're fine.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Now with a 100-foot tower, we're good.
So what I will say is if you haven't had a chance, the select board was given a presentation by the planning department to give a broad-based overview of like, this is how growth areas and zoning work. We just did an elementary crash course in how local land use works in Kennebunkport. And there's a lot of good questions from the select board, and I think that there is definitely interest in doing hopefully joint workshop sessions to continue the conversation of learning about how our land use ordinance is going to be impacted by these changes in state law. So stay tuned to that. I think we're gonna have a busy year next year with the select board to really understand this and start to hopefully move in a direction.
What's the best way to get this information out to the community?
It's, attend the meetings.
Yeah, these meetings,
Right, it's-
attending
It's-
them would be,
But, I mean, to the greater
And all the
community.
agendas, all the
Right.
information's available to anyone who can get to the website. I mean, at some point,
So-
and I'll always, this gives me an opportunity to say what I always want to say, right? We're citizens of this country, and our job is to stay informed, right? It's not free. So we have to go out and stay involved. We have to be the ones that go out and vote, right? And if you can't, you're not, physically can't do that, then hopefully you have the means to get, on the internet.
But this is a good, I mean, this was a good, I couldn't watch it live, and I'm glad you reminded us to go back and watch it. And there might be 10 other people in town who might like to watch it if they knew it existed. So maybe there could be a link, a direct link to it someplace, either, on the website, because people just sometimes go to the website, or on our page, or the Board of Selectmen's.
It's on YouTube, I think.
No, but how would anyone know it's
Right.
there?
Right.
No one would know unless
does-
we
do people-
communicate through a newsletter or,
Do people want to watch like 3 hours of, say, growth planning committee meeting? I mean, there's a lot of information in the meeting, but there's a lot of time where that,
Well, I
is-
think that's where the summary to the select board, right? Because I look at this committee as you guys are literally looking at the words, right? And what the words mean, and our discussion with Rep. Gear was about seeking understanding, because you guys have gone through this quite a bit. We've been through months of this trying to understand. So that was a time where we were trying to seek an understanding, we were trying to understand what the fix-it bill was. But when Galen presented to the select board, you could see the questions from the select board. It was a condensed time frame, and I think that would be helpful for residents to look at, because they're like, okay, this is a growth area, there's something coming forward, there's gonna be more information, to Dan's point, I better stay tuned and keep my eyes on this one. This meeting is good, but it's a working committee
so
meeting.
then the idea would be to somehow direct more residents of our community to that particular meeting.
Yeah.
In some way.
Yep.
And what is the,
Word of mouth, one of the things.
And easy access
Yeah.
to the link or something.
I think you all did a very good job. I was surprised with the attendance we had at Representative Gear's presentation. And I'm sure some of you have probably reached out to some residents to come and attend the meetings, because that was, I think, the most attended meeting that we've had. And I would think it would be beneficial to bring Representative Gear back in the future if there is additional bills and things that we notice that we have, some questions about or to better understand. Because it seemed to generate a lot of interest in people to attend.
So Dave, how many people do we have anybody watching tonight?
Not at present.
So I think somebody mentioned it, we have 17 people on Zoom. And I know my husband was watching us on TV, so people are watching and that's the thing that doesn't get counted. I always get sort of struck about how many people actually watch these meetings on TV. So
You're
we
talking
don't
about
know,
the
because they
select
can't
board
talk.
meeting.
Select board meetings. And I think this meeting, like Galen said, that we had 17 people on Zoom, a couple people attended, and others, including my husband, were watching on TV. So there is something, I think it's like Anne Marie said, it's word of mouth, we'll promote it from the town standpoint, from the select board standpoint, and hopefully people, however they feel about it, will become informed.
yeah, I mean,
Vote.
it's difficult to find the past videos. Like someone said, oh, go to the YouTube, Kennebunkport YouTube television. Well, it just,
Yeah.
a link would be better than just,
Yeah, I mean, if we could do that, I guess that'd be helpful. But there are links to the actual agenda and the whole packet that the Board of Selectmen get.
so
'Cause
what,
I've gone through
it seems
Right.
like in this day and age of AI, it seems like you could be able to do some sort of AI of a 3-hour or 2-hour meeting and condense it into a video, an AI video.
I think they used AI to write these bills.
Yeah.
I think you may be right.
You're right, though, we probably could do something. All right? And we've done the notes, right? I mean, Galen did that for a while with the AI chat, it was pretty
Yeah.
darn close to.
Do we
what
still
said.
have that?
Nope,
Why?
just,
Was this a,
we hired a person to actually do the minutes, so that helps us to
Yeah.
keep track of it. Yeah. But it, you know, I think, you know, besides if someone wants to do a podcast, like, I'm
Yeah.
more than willing to, you know, we can have those conversations, but it is word of mouth. That's really what it's gonna come down to. And certainly if you all think that there is certain areas of town where I should do a presentation to, I've done presentations to the Beach Advisory Committee. I've met with local Rotary, like, I'm more than happy to be accessible, and if you think there's a group that I should go to help educate, I'm more than willing to be a resource.
That's good.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Galen.
All right, so next thing on the agenda is other business. Any other business? I think we actually just covered that, but we didn't formally say so. All right, so in that case, I will take a motion.
I move we adjourn at 7:55.
Second.
Second, excellent. All in favor?
Aye,
Aye.
Right.
Thank you all for watching.
thank you.